You know, one of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships, and not just women, but people in general, is waiting for somebody else to tell them what they're worth. It's almost like we walk around holding a mirror, hoping the reflection that comes back from somebody else will confirm who we are. But here's the truth. If you don't know your worth before you walk into a relationship, you're already at a disadvantage. Because a man cannot, and will not, value you any higher than you value yourself. He can sense it. He can feel it in your energy, in your words, in the way you carry yourself. A queen never waits for validation. She doesn't beg for it. She doesn't negotiate for it. She embodies it, and that embodiment changes everything. When you know your worth, you walk differently. You speak differently. You're not desperate for attention. You're not afraid of rejection. And you're not willing to trade your crown just to keep somebody who doesn't deserve to sit at your table. Now let's get real for a moment. Why is this so hard for so many people? Because society, family, even past relationships, they all plant seeds of doubt. Maybe you grew up in an environment where love was conditional. Maybe you've been in relationships where you gave everything and received nothing back. Over time, you start believing that your value depends on what you do for others, how much you give or how much you're willing to tolerate. That's not worth. That's a bargain, and queens don't bargain for respect. There's a psychological truth here. People treat you according to the standard you set for yourself. If your internal narrative says, "I'll take whatever I can get," then you'll attract men who give you the bare minimum. If your narrative says, "I am worthy of love, loyalty, and respect," you filter out anyone who doesn't rise to that level. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. Think about it. When you walk into a luxury store, nobody haggles over the price. Why? Because the value has already been established. That store knows its worth. It doesn't need to scream for validation. It doesn't need to lower the tag just because someone says it's too expensive. And you've got to adopt that same principle in your life. Don't discount yourself just to make somebody comfortable. Don't shrink so they can feel bigger. If you have to lower your standard to keep a man, then he's not your king. But here's the flip side, and this is important. Knowing your worth isn't about arrogance, and it's not about entitlement. It's not about walking around saying, "I deserve everything and I don't have to give anything." No. That's not the energy of a queen. A queen knows her worth, but she also knows her responsibility to herself, to her values, and to the kind of love she wants to attract. She's not waiting to be rescued. She's already standing tall, and that's what makes a man want to step up to her level. You see, when you operate from a place of worth, you automatically shift the dynamic in every relationship. Men notice it immediately. They sense your confidence, your clarity, your unwillingness to settle, and they respond. A man who has real vision, real ambition, real respect for women, he doesn't see that as intimidating. He sees it as inspiring. He sees it as the energy that makes him want to be better, to give more, to treat you the way you already treat yourself. So, what does this mean in practice? It means you stop accepting crumbs when you deserve the feast. It means you stop answering calls at midnight from a man who couldn't give you the time of day at noon. It means you stop settling for inconsistency, broken promises, and half-effort love. Because the way you love yourself is the manual you hand to everyone else. If you want to be treated like a queen, you have to first believe, deep in your bones, that you are one. Not when you lose 10 pounds, not when you get that job, not when you finally get married, right now, as you are, because worth isn't something you earn, it's something you recognize, and the moment you recognize it, the world has no choice but to respond. So, if there's one thing I want you to remember tonight, it's this. You set the price tag on your own soul. Don't let anyone walk into your life and decide it for you. Wear your crown before anyone else places it on your head, because when you know your worth, you don't just attract love, you command respect. Now, once you understand your worth, the next piece of the puzzle is protecting it. And that protection comes through boundaries, Let me make this clear. Boundaries are not walls. They are not weapons. Boundaries are standards, and standards are how you teach the world, and especially men, how to treat you. A queen doesn't apologize for the throne she sits on. She doesn't explain why she won't accept less than respect, honesty, and consistency. She simply makes it known through her words and her actions. And here's the powerful truth. The moment you get comfortable with setting boundaries, the whole dynamic changes. Because men may not always say it out loud, but they respect a woman who respects herself enough to say no. See, too many people believe that love means never drawing a line. They think setting boundaries makes them difficult, unloving, or too much. But in reality, the absence of boundaries doesn't create more love. It creates more resentment. When you tolerate what bothers you, when you allow behavior that disrespects you, you're teaching that man how little effort he really needs to give. And people, men included, will always rise to or fall to the level of what you consistently allow. Let me give it to you straight. If you don't want to be treated casually, stop accepting casual treatment. If you don't want a man who's inconsistent, stop rewarding inconsistency. If you want to be respected, don't tolerate disrespect. Because boundaries are like guardrails. They keep you safe from driving off the cliff of compromise. Without them, you will always find yourself settling in places that drain you. And I want you to understand the psychology of this. Human beings are wired to test limits. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's just human nature. Kids test their parents. Employees test their bosses, and in relationships, men test women. Not because they always want to cross the line, but because they want to see if the line even exists. If you have no line, you become easy to take for granted. But when you set it clearly and consistently, you earn respect, not through shouting or fighting, but through self-possession. Let me tell you something a lot of people don't want to admit. Men respect clarity. They may not like it in the moment, but they respect it. A woman who can calmly say, "I don't allow that in my life," without yelling, without begging, just stating it with quiet authority, that's unforgettable. Because what it says is, "I don't need to fight for your love. I've already established my value. Either meet it or move aside." Now, boundaries aren't just about saying no. They're also about defining your yes. They are about creating space for the kind of relationship you actually want. If you only say yes to men who treat you with consistency, integrity, and respect, then eventually the wrong ones will weed themselves out. The right man, the one who sees you as a queen, he will not only respect those boundaries, he'll be grateful for them because they bring structure and clarity to the relationship. But here's where so many people trip up. They set boundaries, but they don't enforce them. A boundary without enforcement is just a wish. It's like locking your front door, but giving out spare keys to anybody who asks. Boundaries require courage. They require the willingness to walk away if those lines are crossed. Because every time you betray your own standard just to keep someone close, you teach them that your boundaries are negotiable. And once they know that, the respect starts to erode. This is where self, worth, and boundaries come together. When you know your worth, you don't need to explain your boundaries over and over again. You live them, you embody them, and a man who is serious about you, who sees you as a queen, he will rise to meet those standards. Not because you forced him, but because your energy makes anything less impossible. I want you to take this to heart. Boundaries are not about keeping love out. They are about keeping respect in. A man who is meant for you will not be chased away by your boundaries. He will be shaped by them. He will admire you for having the courage to protect yourself. He will step into his role more fully because he knows he is with a woman who honors herself. So don't apologize for your standards. Don't shrink them to keep someone who doesn't belong. Remember, a boundary is not a wall. It is a crown. And every time you enforce it with grace and strength, you polish that crown a little more. And when you wear that crown without apology, you don't have to demand to be treated like a queen. The world, and the man beside you, will have no choice but to rise to the level of your reign. Now, once you know your worth, and once you've set your boundaries, the way you communicate becomes the bridge that holds it all together. Because you can have the highest self-esteem in the world, you can have the strongest standards, but if you can't express them with strength and grace, they will either get ignored or misunderstood. Here's the truth. Communication is not just about words. It's about presence, it's about tone, it's about the energy behind the message, and the way you communicate determines whether a man sees you as someone to be respected or someone to be tested. Too often, when people don't feel heard, they fall into two traps. One is aggression, raising their voice, repeating themselves, demanding, arguing, even nagging. The other is silence, wallowing their truth, pretending everything is fine, letting frustration build until it explodes. Neither of those approaches works in the long run. One breeds resistance, the other breeds resentment. A queen doesn't have to scream to be heard. She doesn't have to lecture or beg. She communicates with clarity and calm authority. When you speak with strength and grace, you don't just talk. You command attention without demanding it. That's a power most people overlook. Think about it. When someone speaks with panic or desperation, the other person tunes them out. But when someone speaks calmly, firmly, and with certainty, people lean in. That's the psychology of influence. It's not the loudest voice that gets respect. It's the clearest. Let me break this down even further. Men are very literal creatures. They don't always pick up on hints, subtle signals, or passive, aggressive cues. So if you want to be treated like a queen, don't drop hints. Speak directly. Don't say it's fine when it's not. Don't say do whatever you want when you're actually upset. That's confusion, and confusion is the enemy of respect. Instead, communicate exactly what you expect, exactly what you want, and do it in a way that's calm, confident, and consistent. There's also a deeper reason why communication matters. It sets the emotional tone of the relationship. If every discussion turns into a fight, a man will pull back. If every disagreement turns into silence, he'll stop engaging. But when communication is clear and steady, a man feels safe to invest emotionally. He knows where he stands, he knows what's expected, and that security allows him to give more. But let me be clear. Strength without grace turns into dominance, and grace without strength turns into weakness. You need both. Strength means you mean what you say. Grace means you say it in a way that doesn't tear someone down. That balance is magnetic. It makes a man feel challenged but not attacked, respected but also accountable. And here's the philosophical depth of it. The way you communicate with others is ultimately a reflection of how you communicate with yourself. If your inner dialogue is full of self-doubt, you'll come across as unsure. If your inner dialogue is full of anger, you'll come across as hostile. But if your inner dialogue is grounded in worth and clarity, your outer dialogue naturally carries authority. That's why self-respect and boundaries had to come first, because they shape the voice you bring into the relationship. Here's an example. Imagine a man consistently cancels plans last minute. You could either explode in anger, or you could swallow it and say nothing while resentment eats at you. Neither option works, but if you approach it with strength and grace, you might say, when you cancel on me last minute, it makes me feel like I'm not a priority. I value my time, and I want to be with someone who values it too. That's not begging. That's not nagging, that's clarity, and now the ball is in his court. Either he steps up, or you already know where he stands. You see the difference. Grace communicates respect. but strength communicates expectation. Together, they form the language of a queen, and the truth is, men respond to that. A man who's worth your time, when spoken to with strength and grace, doesn't feel disrespected. He feels motivated. He feels honored to rise to the occasion. Because he sees that you are a woman who knows how to express herself without losing herself. So remember this, your words are not just sound, they are standards in motion. Speak them with strength so they carry weight. Speak them with grace so they carry love. And when you do, you'll find that you don't have to fight to be heard. Your very presence will do the talking. And the man beside you, if he's the right man, will listen. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, but out of respect. Because in your voice, he'll hear not just what you want, but who you are. Now, once you know your worth, once you've drawn your boundaries, and once you've learned to communicate with strength and grace, there's another principle you've got to understand if you want a man to truly treat you like a queen. Don't compete with him, compliment him. See, somewhere along the way, the world convinced a lot of us that relationships are a power struggle, that love is a battlefield, that one person has to win and the other has to lose. But the truth is, when you're constantly competing with your partner, both of you lose. Because love isn't about outshining one another, it's about building something greater together. Let me tell you something about men. A real man doesn't want a competitor at home. He already competes out there in the world, against other men, against challenges, against pressure, against expectations. What he wants when he comes home is a partner, someone who knows how to bring balance. Someone who multiplies his energy instead of draining it. Someone who helps him see blind spots, who uplifts him when he's down, and who challenges him with respect, not rivalry. Now let's be clear. Complimenting a man does not mean shrinking yourself. It does not mean silencing your ambition, hiding your intelligence, or pretending to be less than you are just to make him feel bigger. That's not compliment. That's compromise of self. And a queen doesn't have to dim her light for her king to shine. No, complimenting means shining in your lane so powerfully that together your lights make the kingdom brighter. Think about this for a moment. The sun and the moon never compete. The sun doesn't get insecure when the moon lights up the night, and the moon doesn't resent the sun for ruling the day. They each operate in their purpose, and together they create the balance that sustains life. That's what true partnership looks like. The psychology behind this is simple. Men are wired to provide, to achieve, to conquer, but they are also wired to crave connection, respect, and affirmation. When a woman constantly tries to one-up a man, she chips away at that natural drive. But when she positions herself as a complement, adding wisdom, emotional intelligence, perspective, she actually amplifies his drive. And in turn, he feels inspired to give back, to pour more into the relationship, to treat her like the queen she is. Now, let me address something important. Some women hear this and think, so you're saying I should just build him up and not expect anything back? No, that's not the message. A healthy relationship is reciprocal, but here's the key. When you stop trying to compete, when you bring value instead of rivalry, a good man won't take advantage of it. He'll mirror it. He'll start to pour into you the same way you pour into him. And suddenly, you're not just individuals. You're a team. A queen knows she has her own power, her own throne, her own vision. She doesn't need to fight the king for his crown. Instead, she wears hers, and together they rule stronger. That's the difference between competing and complimenting. Competing says, I have to beat you. Complimenting says, we both win when we bring our strengths together. Here's the deeper philosophy. Competition in a relationship is rooted in insecurity. Compliment is rooted in security. If you're secure in your worth, you don't need to prove you're better. You know your value, you know his value, and you know the magic happens when both are combined. Insecurity says, I can't let him shine too much or I'll be overlooked. Security says, I shine so brightly on my own that together we light up the whole sky. And men feel that. They can tell the difference between a woman who's trying to outdo them and a woman who's standing beside them. And let me tell you, a real man is drawn to the woman who compliments because she makes him feel stronger, sharper, and more focused. He doesn't feel threatened, he feels empowered. And when a man feels empowered by you, he will go out of his way to honor you, protect you, and treat you like royalty. So here's what I want you to take with you. Stop thinking of love as a contest. Stop keeping score. Stop trying to prove that you don't need him. You already know you don't need him. That's your worth. But your strength is even greater when you choose to compliment, when you build together instead of against one another. Because at the end of the day, queens don't compete with kings. They complement them. And when they do, they don't just build relationships. They build empires. Now this next part is where a lot of people struggle the most. You can know your worth, you can set your boundaries, you can communicate with clarity, you can even compliment instead of compete. But none of that matters if you don't have the courage to walk away from what diminishes you. See, too many women stay in situations that drain them, belittle them, or slowly chip away at their dignity, all because they're afraid of being alone, or because they've invested too much time, or because they keep hoping he'll change. But let me tell you something I've learned about life and love. If a man can consistently disrespect you and still have access to you, he has no reason to treat you differently. Why would he? You've already shown him that his behavior won't cost him anything. That's why walking away is so powerful. It's not just an exit, it's a declaration. It says, I will not trade my crown for crumbs. I will not lower my standard just to keep someone close. I know my worth, and if you can't rise to meet it, I would rather stand alone than shrink in your shadow. Now let me be real with you. Walking away isn't easy. It takes strength. It takes discipline. It takes faith, because sometimes the wrong relationship feels safer than no relationship. Sometimes you'd rather tolerate less than you deserve than face the silence of starting over. But here's the deeper truth. Staying in what diminishes you doesn't just steal your peace, it steals your future. Because every day you spend settling is a day you're not available for the love that's actually meant for you. Psychologically, this is about reinforcement. Behavior that is tolerated becomes behavior that is repeated. If you allow lies, they will continue. If you allow inconsistency, it becomes the norm. If you allow disrespect, it becomes the foundation of the relationship. But the moment you walk away, you break the cycle, you disrupt the pattern, you send a message, not just to him, but to yourself, that you are no longer available for anything less than what you deserve. And here's the philosophy behind it. Life will always test your commitment to yourself. Every time you say, I won't accept less than respect, life will put someone in front of you who challenges that. And if you stay, you're teaching yourself that your words don't matter. But if you walk away, you're proving that your standards are real. That's integrity. That's alignment between what you say and how you live. And when those two match, that's when you step fully into your power. Let me tell you what men respect. Men respect women who are willing to walk away. You don't even have to say it as a threat. You don't have to scream it during an argument. Just the quiet strength of a woman who knows when enough is enough. That shakes a man to his core. Because he realizes he can't manipulate her, he can't buy her with half effort, he can't keep her with sweet words and empty actions. She will leave if he doesn't honor her, and that forces him to decide, either rise to her level or lose her altogether. Now, some women hear this and think, but what if I walk away and he never comes back? And my answer is simple, then he wasn't your king. Then he wasn't the one who saw your crown. And why would you want to beg someone to come back who couldn't recognize your worth the first time? Walking away isn't about forcing a man to change. It's about creating space for the man who doesn't need to be convinced. You owe it to yourself to never stay where your soul is shrinking. You owe it to yourself to never settle for half love, half effort, or half respect, because the longer you stay in what diminishes you, the more you forget that you were meant to reign. And when you do finally walk away, you discover something extraordinary. You realize you didn't lose, you gained. You gained clarity, you gained strength, you gained space for better to enter. Walking away doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise enough to protect your crown. So let me leave you with this thought. A queen who knows when to walk away never loses her throne. She carries it with her. And the man who truly sees her worth will never risk losing her in the first place. By the time you know your worth, set your boundaries, speak with strength and grace, choose to compliment instead of compete, and have the courage to walk away from what diminishes you. There's one last principle. That seals it all. Inspire through your actions, not your demands. See, here's the mistake so many people make in relationships. They think if they say it loud enough, repeat it enough, or demand it forcefully enough, the other person will finally change. But here's the reality. Words don't inspire transformation. Actions do. People don't change because you tell them to. They change because your example either raises the standard or exposes the gap. Think about it. If you tell a man to respect you, but you don't respect yourself, your words carry no weight. If you tell him to be consistent, but you keep rewarding inconsistency, your message falls flat. But when you show him through your actions, how you carry yourself, how you treat yourself, how you refuse to tolerate less, that's when he begins to adjust. That's when he realizes he's either got to step up or step out. And let's be honest here, men respond to inspiration more than they do to control. The psychology of it is simple. When someone tries to control you, you resist. It feels restrictive, suffocating. But when someone inspires you, you willingly rise. You want to give more, do more, become more. That's the difference between nagging and motivating, between pushing and leading. A queen doesn't need to constantly demand her place. Her presence inspires it. This is where grace comes full circle. Your life itself becomes the standard. When you operate with dignity, when you practice discipline, when you honor yourself consistently, you don't have to demand to be treated like a queen. You show it, and when you show it, men notice. The right man will respond by giving you more of the very things you already give to yourself. Now here's the philosophical depth. Leadership by example is the highest form of influence. You don't need to prove your worth through endless explanations. You embody it, you live it, and in doing so, you remind everyone around you, especially a man in your life, that love isn't something you force. It's something you inspire. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine two women. One is constantly telling her man, "You don't treat me right. You don't call me enough. You don't give me what I need." Over time, her words lose their power. He hears them, but he doesn't feel them. The other woman doesn't beg, doesn't demand. Instead, she shows through her life what she values. She respects her time. She pours into her growth. She doesn't stick around when her worth isn't recognized. She doesn't have to demand better because her actions declare this is the standard. And guess what? The right man sees it, and he adjusts not out of pressure, but out of inspiration. And here's the truth. A queen doesn't raise her voice to prove her crown. She raises her standards, and she lives by them. That's the action that speaks louder than any demand ever could. But let's also be clear, this isn't about manipulation. It's not about playing games to get a man to do what you want. It's about authenticity. It's about living in such alignment with your values that your life itself becomes a statement. When you are consistent, when you are whole, when you are disciplined, the energy you radiate naturally attracts respect and repels anything beneath your standard. So stop wasting energy demanding love from the wrong places. Stop exhausting yourself trying to convince someone to see your value. Instead, live in your value so boldly that the wrong ones fall away and the right one doesn't have to be told. He can see it. And the beauty of this is that it shifts the power back to you, because you're no longer waiting for someone else to validate you or change for you. You're leading with your life. And when you lead with your life, you inspire, you elevate, and you attract a level of love that aligns with your worth. So if you remember nothing else, remember this. Men may hear what you say, but they will always believe what you show. Speak less, live more, demand less, embody more, because when your actions reflect the queen that you are, you won't have to convince anyone to treat you like one. The right man will see your crown without you ever pointing to it. And the wrong man, he won't last long enough to matter.